Tree Committee would like to welcome you here. Let me just give you a quick background before it takes over. First of all, I chair the Tree Committee. Shirley Kaczynski's on it. Veterinary. Steve Dempsey will be on it.
Pending.
You can run, but you can't hide.
The process of getting things done in town is a bit longer than we anticipate, but that's the way it is. Have a seat. Just quickly, Tree Committee came about a little over 2 years ago, almost 3 years ago. When I was on the planning board, we got mitigation money for cutting trees down, and then the town manager agreed that we needed some sort of committee to allocate those funds for mitigation funds, and the Tree Committee was set up. It took a while, but we got it set up. And since then, we've had a number of accomplishments. Nicole Holmes is on the Tree Committee. She should be here. She had another commitment. And she's been very good at working to get Bridgewater designated a tree city. And we are a tree city now. In fact, Paul DeCosta, who's also on the committee, who's the highway superintendent, is putting up the tree city signs as we speak, very, very shortly. So you'll see them on the entrances, the roads entering Bridgewater, large tree city signs.
Sort of the entrance going into Leverage.
Well, yeah, I did that one. But you have to apply for the tree city designation every year. And it's not a simple process. You have to reach certain standards before they will proclaim you a tree city. And I believe she said we've just been okayed for 2024 now, which is good. But it's not a simple process. She's done a tremendous job in terms of putting that together. She's worked with students in terms of drawings and so forth. We've done plantings at Marathon Park, the senior center stuff you see, the trees and so forth around the senior center. The Tree Committee allocated $6,000 for that. We have, thanks to Shirley, we have trees on Main Street and Broad Street. We've proposed changes to the shade tree ordinance that the town has. And you should be aware of that. Because the shade tree ordinance determines what trees are town trees and not town trees. And a lot of people don't realize that the trees along the street are not theirs to cut down. They are town trees, and they have to follow a procedure to cut those trees down, which some people don't do. And if you do, you can be fined, literally. It's like $500 the first. Anyway, that shade tree ordinance, we've revised it. We sent it to town manager. It's still in process, of course. We've also come up with a tree mitigation schedule so that if developers come in and cut trees down, that they have to pay for it. That's still up in the air. Moving along. No.
Well, I just got on rules and procedures, so if I can help you in any way, I will.
Sometimes dictators come in handy, but not in this case. No, I understand the process is long. The main thing that one of the things that we really wanted was a tree warden that was an active tree warden. And the interim town manager has done a great job. We're going to get an on-call tree warden. In other words, somebody that would be called if needed, but not on a regular 8-hour day and so forth. So that's good. Things we like eventually, I know money's tight right now, we'd like to see a forestry department, which we had one up to the beginning of the 1990s, and that's gone now. We'd love to see one come back. That's a ways away. More plantings, we want to get into the schools, education, educate kids on trees. And that's basically where we are right now. We have we've come a long way, but we have a long way to go. Okay, that's it. The main thing tonight is simply how to plant and take care of trees, which is a good idea. Ron Ackchart from the college is the speaker. He doesn't mind if you ask questions during the presentation. I will add that when I called a while back his dean, and I said, you know, we need somebody who knows trees. And he said, Ron is the person at the college to trees. So You're on.
Thank you, Ray, I appreciate that. Yeah, so I'm officially an aquatic plant biologist in training, but I've done all kinds of different work with trees and other stuff in the past. And I definitely a plant biologist, love plants. My students not so much. I always try to get them to love plants more, but they're more animal type people. But I try to show them how fun plants can be. But we just finished up our 2 labs on plants. They're like, oh my god, plants are done, yay! Like, no, more plant stuff. So my presentation today will be on going over a bunch of different native trees that would be good to be utilized in this landscape. Talking about kind of the growth habits, pluses and minuses to each of the trees. Wasn't going to remember how I had total, so I have lots of slides. So if I go through them quickly, you'll just slow me down if you think you need to. And then toward the end of the presentation, I have a series of slides of things to do for the actual planting itself. And Ray also gave me these little pamphlets that anything that needs these, the Arbor Day Foundation tree planting guide. So those are also available if you might want one of those. And for those who are curious, I've been at BSU for 13 years. This is my 13th year at BSU. So I like it, I enjoy it. I like biology in general, but obviously I am a plant biologist in training. All right, so for anyone I go over, I do like to plant native material as much as possible. Does that say I always plant native stuff? No, I have plenty of non-native in my own yard at home, so I just plant things. I have some of the no-no things. They were there when I moved in. I haven't gotten around to cutting them down, but they're nice, and I don't mind them sitting there, I suppose. But we're going to define native as that only those plants I can find in Massachusetts. Period. It only occurs here. I'm concerned with trees that occur maybe in the northeast U.S., not necessarily Massachusetts. Maybe they're more northern species, but I can plant the area that survives fine. Any kind of tree that occurs along the east coast of the U.S. I'm not saying again in Massachusetts. Maybe it occurs up to maybe Maryland or New Jersey, but it doesn't actually get this far north. I'm going to consider that to be my native, right? Or am I going to have a nice broad sweeping? Am I going to think anything that occurs in the U.S. that's fine with me? Anything that occurs here in Massachusetts, I'm going to consider that to be a native. I'm not going to tell you what's native, what's not native. That's going to be up to you to decide as to what you want to plant and what you can consider native or not. I always look at it as, is it a tree or is it a plant that has been known to be invasive in other places it's been planted? Right? That's one thing I think about. And I also want to worry about, is this plant going to be able to survive in my area? Right? So that's things to consider. So there's lots of reasons why a plant may actually occur here, but could survive here no problem. Maybe there's a geographical boundary that it can't get over. Right? There's a mountain range. It's in the way. Well, it can't get here because it can't get over the mountain. That's one thing it could be. Maybe it just hasn't gotten here because it's fruits or it's seeds. Can't disperse over long distances, so it just hasn't gotten here yet. But it's working its way here. Right? Great example would be the Southern catalpa tree, not native to Massachusetts, all right, but it's worked its way up here. It's here now. It's fine. It's happy. It'll probably be in our flora forever, right? But it's not naturally from here. Right? Maybe it gets out-competed by other plants that are already here in the area that are already better suited for the area. I mean, that'd be the reason why it hasn't gotten here. Maybe there's some sort of a habitat disturbance that it can't handle, or it needs a disturbance, and we don't have that here. Right? Climate change, maybe it's just not warm enough. Things are changing, so again, it's probably another reason why we have the catalpa tree here. Right? Or there are other invasive species that have already been introduced that outcompete this item that I'm trying to plant in the first place. Right? So those are all potential reasons why that may not actually occur, but it could live here just fine. So let's take a look at some native tree examples. All right, so I'm going to go through a slide, tell you a little bit about the tree, and I'm going to show you some pictures that go along with it. Right. So the American linden, Tilia americana, isn't overly planted per se as a tree that you can go to most nurseries and find. You're more apt to find the European linden, or also called the little leaf linden, Tilia cordata, but they do just fine. Right? The little leaf linden is not known to be invasive, so I will put that out there. If you don't want to grow our native one, you want to grow the European one, it doesn't seem to be invasive. This tree gets 60 to 120 feet tall, trunk diameter 3 to 5 feet at maturity, spread of the tree probably about half as wide as it is tall. It does have a large, deep spreading root system, small fragrant flowers in midsummer. Does cast very intense shade, so if you want to try to grow things underneath of it, keep that in mind. Right? It is fairly intolerant of pollution and urban conditions. So it's not one that you're going to want to plant too close to the roadway or an area that gets a lot of traffic to go by it per se. So it's not overly pollution tolerant. And what does it look like? So the leaves have this little oblique leaf base. This will go onto the edge. Small little white flowers, which do smell really nice in the summertime. They smell amazing. Beautiful smell to them. And then over on the right is kind of the generalized growth habit for the tree, and what it would look like. And there are lots of other uses for the tree. You can make tea out of the flowers, stuff. So lots of uses for the American. It's called linden, basswood, a couple of names for it. Question then? Good. Okay. Okay. American wild plum, Prunus americana. Small tree, all right, up to 15 feet tall. I'm not going to get overly big on it, so one thing that's nice about it, it's not overly huge. It is adapted to coarse and medium textured soils. It grows poorly in silty or clay soil, so our soils here are perfect for it. All right, it loves what we have around here. We don't have a lot of silt and clay type soils. Okay? Fruits are edible, but most people tend to make them into jams and jellies. Right? It does have a shallow spreading root system with suckers, right? And it does show some pollution tolerance. Right, so it's one that you can actually plant a little bit closer to the road and it won't be as hurt by the conditions of the roadway. Right? But also keep in mind with that shallow spreading root system, you're going to put it next to, say, like a walkway or something like that, it's going to push the walkway up. So nice early to mid-spring flowering on it, so pretty flowers, and then those are the fruits, the little plums that it produces. Black oaks, Quercus vegetina, good sized tree, 65 to 80 feet tall, 3 to 4 foot trunk diameter, deep taproot. Right, so this is not going to be one that's going to uproot your driveways, that kind of stuff. So the root goes straight down, which is awesome. Right? But they are somewhat difficult to transplant because of that large taproot. So if you're going to get a black oak, make sure you get one that's small enough to be able to move around fairly easily. You're not going to get one of these, and I'll mention this in a few minutes. See what's called a B&B tree, or it's called a ball and burlap. Right, so the ones that have the larger trunk bottoms on them, you tend not to find these like that because you're going to have to get a very large root ball on it, and no one's going to be able to move for you. Right, so these tend to be transplanted more so in cans versus B&B. Moderate to good pollution tolerance, so a definite plus for them. Right? They are adapted to dry upland soils with a deep water table. And then one kind of thing about it, they have velvety hairs on the buds when they're grown in the sunshine. So it's hence the name vegetina or velvet. We have lots of oaks. So black oak leaves are here. This is just one example. The black oak leaf has a huge variation as to what the leaves look like. This is one of the more typical types of leaves. And then black oaks and red oaks both have these little tiny spines on the tips of their leaves. All around the leaf itself. Really good spreading canopy habit to the tree. Does not cast intense shade, so it casts a nice dappled shade underneath of it. And the acorns tend to be about half covered with the cap on top for most of the black oaks. Right? Anything that's in the black/red group has the potential of hybridizing with others in that same group. And the same thing for the white oaks. Anything that's in the white oak group, you can get all kinds of hybrids that go along with it too. Pin oaks, Quercus blusher. This is definitely one that's planted quite a bit for several reasons. One, it doesn't get overly big, but still 7 feet tall max. 3 to 4 foot trunk diameter. Very tolerant of pollution and soil compactions. That's one of the reasons why it's grown quite a bit along streets and stuff, because it can handle that very well. Right? It does, however, have a spreading root system, unlike most oaks. Most oaks are going to be taprooted. This guy has a more spreading type root system. Right? And the branch root is kind of cool. So the upper branches point up, the center branches point out, and the bottom branches point down. Right? So it gives the whole tree kind of like this pyramidal look to it, which is kind of cool. So if you ever see a tree that looks like it has these branches kind of pointing straight down at the ground with no leaves on it, like, oh, you can look at a pin oak. That's what it is. Again, kind of a nice sized tree habit. Right? Acorns, the cap only covers about a quarter of the top of the acorn. And what's cool though is you look closely, you guys can see it, there's stripes. The acorns are striped. Right? So any of the pin oaks are going to have the striped acorns on it. And this does belong to the red/black oak group. All right, the white oak group, Quercus alba, big, all right, 80 to 100 feet tall, can grow as wide as tall. All right, so these things are big, right? Very deep taproot, but they also produce an expansive lateral root system when mature, so they'll have the taproot and laterals, right? However, very intolerant of anthropogenic pollution, aka cars, smog, that kind of stuff, salt from around the roads and whatnot, right? And as I mentioned, they hybridize a lot, so the bur oak, swamp white oak, and chestnut oak are all examples of oaks that this white oak can hybridize with, and they're just gliding from one into the other, so you'll be really hard pressed to tell who's who. Right? Any of the white oak trees and group, their leaves are more rounded, no little spines on the ends, right? And they can be divided like, or lobe, like this one is high lobe, or they can be almost entire, like the chestnut oak has almost no lobes on it. White oaks tend to have very long, skinny acorns, right, with the cap only covering a small portion of the top. Not my favorite tree. I noticed it was on your list of trees for the town. I think they smell great. I think they're messy, but that's just me. So they get pretty good size. They're very fast growing, 65 to 100 feet tall, 40 to 50 feet wide, so a pretty good sized tree. They are definitely tap rooted, so that's a definite plus. Right? Especially when we're trying to grow these near a roadway or a walkway, something like that. Even though they're fast growing, they're not overly long lived, about 125 years, which in a tree realm, that's short. Right? Unless you're a birch, which is probably less than that, but again, still not that long. Right? Highly adaptable to all kinds of soil. So this is not very picky when it comes to soil type. Right? And they are also very pollution tolerant. Right? This, however, has been shown to be extremely invasive outside of its native range. Right? Native range occurs all the way from Maine down to about, I think, North Carolina, South Carolina, that area, all the way out to like Nebraska. So it's got a pretty wide native range. Right? But outside of that, it's been grown in Australia, where it's become a huge problem over there. So yeah, depending outside of native range, it becomes extremely invasive, which is very typical of legumes.
Why would it be a problem?
So it's pushing out other native trees.
Okay.
Right. So yeah. So they planted this, and now it's self-seeding like crazy. So like the Norway maple is doing through us here.
Okay.
So same kind of concept.
So outside of zone 7, it would be invasive?
Yeah, probably zone 7 to 8. Yeah. And again, but it's highly adaptable. I know. Also noticed on the website that it's suggested to grow Cladithia, Triacanthos, variety Inermis. So Inermis means without spines, right? So the reason why it's called Triacanthos, acanthos means spine, and tri is 3. So all on the stems, you'll see these long barbs, long thorns all up and down the stems. The Inermis variety doesn't have those. However, if you grow the Inermis variety and it does produce fruits and seeds, the seeds revert back to the parent type. So they will revert back to having thorns on them again. So any of those seeds you collect, you want to try to grow more, you will not have thorns again. So it's only on the ones that are initially Inermis that will stay Inermis, unless you clone it. That happens a lot. Here's what it looks like. So there's long brown pods, right? Flowers midsummer. One nice thing is that flowers midsummer. So a lot of things you don't have flowering at that time. It's nice to have a midsummer flower. Very open canopy. There is a variety, Sunburst. I think it's called Sunburst. It has yellow leaves all season, so all year long the tree's kind of a yellowy color. My cursor's going to show you or not. So these are the thorns right here. I'm kind of circling with the curve. You see my cursor?
Yep.
Yeah, so it's circling it there. So those are the spines. Right? There's all kinds of things in the legume family that have spines on it. This happens to be one of them. Then there's black locust, which is also invasive here, which is very similar to this tree, so very similar growth habit. American sweet gum, this was planted a lot on campus. There's a whole bunch of new ones, and this is definitely one of my favorite trees. I love this tree. 50 to 70 feet tall, so not huge, good size though. 2 to 3 foot diameter tree trunk. Shallow, aggressive root system over, so it will lift up your driveways and your walkways, so kind of keep that in mind, right? Poor to fair pollution tolerance, so it has some pollution tolerance, which is good. One better thing is it has moderate salt tolerance. Right? So again, near roadways, a lot of things we don't think about how much salt we use in our roads to kind of keep the snow and stuff down. So this actually does a pretty good job with that, which is nice. And I love saying the Latin name, Liquidambar styracifluva. A lot of people will see this tree and think, oh, it's a really cool maple, because it has a maple-like looking leaf on it, but not quite the same. And the whole tree has a really cool smell to it. So if you crush the leaves, that kind of a lemony-ish type smell to it. Kind of cool fruit, little round fruits.
Is that out on the corner of the driveway here? You haven't noticed?
I haven't noticed.
Okay.
No, I haven't noticed. I know all the campus, and it has a beautiful fall color. Colors ranging from yellows to oranges to reds to purples, all on the same tree, all on one tree. And you can see all kinds of cool colors on that. It has recently been moved for its family, nobody cares, but it's not in the same family anymore. But they're pretty. I like those. I like sweet gums. There you go. American Beach. So I did notice on the website that you had listed Fagus sylvatica as an American beach. That's not American Beach. That is European Beach. So our grandiflora is our native tree. Huge, 100 feet tall, 4 to 5 foot trunk diameter, shallow spreading root system. So again, it's going to pick up your roads and stuff. Right? Not very pollution tolerant, which is one of the reasons why it's probably not grown very much. Because the European beach has a much greater tolerance for pollution, right? And it doesn't sucker as much. Right? Our native beach sends out all kinds of underground runners, sends up new trees, it's very clonal. The European beach is nowhere, it doesn't do that anywhere near as much. Right? So the American beach is one that will do that, but if you want to stick with natives, then the American beach. Both, however, are susceptible to the beach leaf disease. Right? So both the European beach and our native beach are both susceptible to that, level of nematode.
So once they get it, are they gone? Because my neighborhood is infested, my neighborhood's
Yeah,
beach is
I don't, I'll refer to the arborist. Yeah, so as far as I know, there's been no help for them per se. So I'm not sure what's out there right now, how they're trying to take care of it. The beaches are definitely having all kinds of issues, and it's more than just that. I mean,
Oh.
there's more than just the beach leaf disease.
Yeah, remember last year, the guy from DCR said that there was a disease, so we shouldn't encourage beech trees?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And again, it's either the American or another one, or the European beach. Yeah.
That's too bad.
It is. I mean, they're really pretty trees. They have that gorgeous light gray bark that's nice and smooth. Growth habits nice. I was just sucking like crazy. Red maple. Right, you want a tree that can handle anything you throw at it. Red maples. Right, they can grow pretty much anywhere they want. They can grow in standing water, top of a mountain, whatever. They don't care. 920 feet tall, 18 to 35 foot trunk diameter. Try that again, not feet, inch. Wrong. Those are inches, not feet. That's a big ass tree. No, inches. It is currently replacing other maples as our dominant forest tree in East North America. So again, a lot of our other trees are having issues. And since the red maple is highly adaptable, it's like, okay, fine, I'll grow there then. If you can't grow there anymore, I'll come in and I'll grow there. Typical maple, shallow invasive root system, so don't ever plant these anywhere near your septic system or anywhere near anything that has to do with that kind of system because it'll definitely get in it. Right? But compared to other maples, more tolerant for air pollution and road salts. Right? So it actually doesn't have too much of an issue with road salt and pollution compared to other maples. Which we'll talk about saying the other ones. Yes, they are red, but not all red maples are red. Their color range is anywhere from orangey to vibrant fire red colors. Right? Unlike other native maples, it only has 3 lobes to the leaf. I'll use my one cursor. So 3 lobes to the leaf. Right? That is highly indented. Right? Fruits are also red and much smaller than any of our other maples we have around that are native. Sugar maple, Acacia saccharum, 80 to 120 feet tall. This is correct, 4 to 6 foot trunk diameter, so they get large. Right? Typical maple, large spreading root system. Right? Shade tolerant, kind of a nice thing about it. A lot of maples are not. This is a shade tolerant maple. And their seeds require a hard freeze in order to germinate. Right? So unlike a lot of other maples, they don't require to freeze. These guys do require that. Right? They are intolerant of high heat and high humidity, which is why if you ever see these down south, Georgia, even Tennessee, Kentucky, it's only going to be in the high Appalachians. You're not going to see it down along the Piedmont and stuff. So only on the upper levels. Right? Very intolerant of pollution and very low salt tolerance. Right? And often confused with Norway maple, which I'll show you a picture of it, some pictures in a second, kind of comparing the two. Right? So sugar maples have chocolate brown buds. They have brown twigs. Their flower is going to be long and dangling and thin. And their fruits are going to be kind of held close together, almost at like a 90-degree angle when the wings come off. Right? And this is the typical maple leaf shape that they're going to have. Right? Whereas when I compare that to our Norway maple, I didn't show the bud, but the buds on Norways are actually red, not brown. Right? Leaves look very similar. Sometimes they almost look identical. But notice the fruits, the samaras, are at the side. I don't know what that is, so they hold sideways. All right? And the flowers are actually large and showy compared to the sugar maple. Right? They also flower earlier than sugars too, a little bit earlier. And these are actually suspected, even though almost all maples are wind pollinated, they suspect that these are actually also partially insect pollinated because of the size of the flowers. And they also have a nectary ring, which is not typical of something that's going to be wind pollinated. Right? But this could be a good example of a transition tree. Also, the bark on the Norways have long linear lines to them, whereas a sugar maple is going to have more platy type bark. So it's going to actually have a little section kind of lifting up on the sides. But the Norway maple is definitely definitely pushing out native sugar maples. If we go to dogwood, Cornus alternifolia, the only alternate leaf dogwood. All dogwoods are opposite leaves, except this one oddball out. About 25 feet tall, 25 feet wide, so as tall as it is wide. Shade tolerant as a young plant. The branches are tiered, which makes it kind of a really cool look to it. And the leaves are clustered at the end. Spreading root system, and really intolerant pollution. But around here we don't have too much pollution to worry about. But they are really pretty trees. Go. Fine, space bar. Small blue fruits in fall time, little white flowers in springtime. And this is that lovely tiered look, so kind of layering effect of the branches as you move off the tree. Okay, so they do have a really, really pretty look to them. They do not have the large showing bracts like the Cornus florida, like the flowering dogwood has, so no bracts. But they still have the nice pretty white flowers on them. River birch, Betula nigra, variety heritage. So this is one that's most planted, it's out there. Pretty good sized birch tree, 800 feet tall. Most birches are short-lived. Which includes this one. So again, maybe 125, 150 years or so is about as much as going to get out of a birch. Right? Usually multi-stemmed, bark peels off very easily. Right? Sheltered root system, all birches have that. But they have good tolerance for pollution, which makes them really nice to plant around town and stuff. So these are the little fruit type things that they produce, or catkins. And this is that kind of pitty bark that they have. And when they're really young, the bark is a very toasty brown color. As they get older, it gets a little bit more gray, or you don't see quite as much of that color anymore. But they're pretty. Bunch of them on campus too. One that I wish was planted more. Not native to Massachusetts. It's not one of our native trees, but sourwood, Oxygenum arboreum. Good sized tree, 35 to 65 feet tall. Right? Trunk diameter 20 inches, so not a huge tree. Not going to get overly big on it. Right? Typical shelter. Spreading root system again. It does require acid soils. Thankfully, we have those in spades around here, so no problem for us around here. Poor tolerance to pollution. Right? Another great example of flowers in the summertime. So this is going to be flowering in July into August. Right? So a great tree to have around for that kind of time frame. Right? And it has a gorgeous red fall color on the sourwoods. Yeah, we have one of these on campus. The one on the left is a very young one, the one on the right is a bit older. Right? These long, kind of dangly panicles of flowers that kind of hang down. So they are really, really pretty. And a nice aroma too to the flowers. Nice scent. Tulip tree, Liriodendron tulipifera, big, 160 feet tall, right? 4 to 6 foot trunk diameter, fast growing, almost no lower limbs. So when you see a tree that's literally like a telephone pole going straight up, the limbs are like way up high, tulip tree. Deep taproot, which makes them nice for putting near roadways and stuff. Fairly good pollution tolerance, which is also really good. And they were actually used as the original telephone poles, but they're too soft of a wood, right? So they don't last long. So you'd be replacing your telephone poles way too frequently with this thing. But again, because they grow so straight, they were actually originally used as a telephone pole. Gorgeous flowers, really pretty, kind of a very muted lemony yellow color with that beautiful orange ring in the middle. Leaves look maple-ish, I suppose. I'm not really sure how you found them, but these up here, I think these are cool. These are these over here, right? And then there's an example of where there's no limbs down the bottom, they're all way up high, right? So when these trees are only like, where are the flowers? Way out there. This picture actually here is my picture that I took. So this is the tree that occurs right in front of the church on campus. So there's actually one right there in front of the church. Not really a tree, more of a really big shrub, right? With the shablows and service berries, Amelanchier canadensis. Can reach about 25 feet tall, usually multi-stemmed. You can occasionally find single stems in these guys, but almost invariably a multi-stemmed tree. Non-invasive from its root system, so even though it does have a shallow root system, doesn't go crazy on you, so it kind of stays about where the tree is, which is nice. Fair pollution tolerance, and it does flower in mid to late spring during the running of the shad, so that's how it got one of its names. If you know this is in flower, you know if you want to collect your shad row, you better get out there because this is going to be the time for you to go get your shad row. So pretty little white flowers all over the tree. Right? Sometimes they start out a light pinkish color, turn to white. It's in the rose family. Right? So this, apples, and the fruits are edible. For those who want to eat these, they are edible. They don't produce a lot of fruits, but they are edible. Give them little mini apples. Another one I think is not planted enough, black tupelo, or just bring another name. It's one of the gum names. 60, what's that? Black gum? Black gum, yeah, it's a cane, yeah. So 60 to 80 feet tall, 20 to 40 inch trunk diameter, deep taproot, so again, one of the ones you can plant near walkways and stuff. Limbs are held at right angles to the trunk, so they're really held straight off, right? Not great on pollution tolerance, right? But it is very tolerant of wet alluvial soils. You have an area of your yard that stays kind of wet more often than not, great choice to put there. And the fall color is amazing, right? So and you produce these little tiny greenish fruits on them. But the fall color ranges anywhere from an intense orange through red to purples, yellows, and again, all on the same tree. All on the same tree. So this is Sylvatica. Great. Questions on trees?
On a maple tree that's self-propagating in that it has these little wings that fall out and immediately plant themselves in the middle of your yard, is what species?
Well, Norway.
Probably Norway, yeah.
And we probably don't want to encourage the growth of that unless you want to go
That's
weeding
invasive,
your
right?
grass.
What's that?
That's a real invasive.
Yeah, it's really, really invasive. So if you walk along any of our roadsides around here and you look at all these little tiny maples that are all in the understory, yeah, almost all of them are Norways. Very few of them are sugars.
Are they calling them invasive yet? Because I know they say don't buy them.
Yeah,
buy
so
them?
I don't know in Massachusetts if you can still buy them or not. I don't know. I suspect you can. I believe
Right,
you
I
can.
think you can, but.
Yeah, but I would suggest not.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely not. And there are others I wouldn't suggest hedge maples either, which are from England, Acer campestri. So there's a couple I would keep away from. If you want a really cool maple that doesn't seem to be invasive, paper bark maple, Acer gricium, those are kind of cool. But again, the thing with anything that, if there's one relative that is invasive, if you start planting other relatives, there's always that chance that it could become invasive. You know what I mean? So you have to kind of keep that in mind. We haven't seen it, but it doesn't mean it's not going to happen. A lot of times with invasive species, it takes them decades to become invasive. You don't realize until it's too late.
Who determines whether it's invasive or not?
Yeah, good question. So you have to take into several factors. One, is it actually getting out away from where it's planted? In other words, is it actually becoming part of our naturalized system at that point? Right? One. Two, is it pushing native species out? In other words, are there native species that are becoming threatened because of this new larger population of the species that wasn't supposed to be here in the first place? Right. And as for who's determining whether you can or can't do it, the horticultural trade in the first part is going to say, okay, well, guys, this is becoming way too, it's getting out of control, so we need to stop selling this. And the state government can also decide, if they want to be invasive or not. The odd part is, you can have native invasives, poison ivy. Great example of a native, but I'm not going to, things going crazy. It's all over the place. So just because it's introduced doesn't mean it's going to become invasive. Right? And there's other things to consider too. Is there anything in our native area that it could hybridize with? create a hybrid swarm. You know, in other words, these hybrids are now better at this environment than either parent is. I haven't seen any hybrids in the maples that I know of. I don't know.
Just to carry that one step more, I assume what you mean by invasive is that people are planting trees elsewhere, but birds carry seed, don't they? Couldn't they?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
some of the seeds move on their own. Yeah, yep, yeah. I mean, I can give you a seed. Japanese barberry, winged burning bush, orange bittersweet. All three of those, all right, were suggested by the USDA to be intentionally planted, all right, back in the 1940s and 50s. Because all these are great bird food. We need to plant more of these because the birds love these fruits. Ta-da! Look where we are today. All three of them have become exceptionally invasive. All right, we no longer have Solastris scandens, which is our native bittersweet here in Massachusetts. I think there's one population left, maybe. Other than that, we haven't seen it in years, because the Oriental one pushed it out. It was better what it did. But again, this is a great example of our U.S. government saying, "Hey, plant this stuff. This is great for birds." And the Audubon Society also said, "Yeah, we should plant this stuff." Oops. Yeah. Other things like kudzu vine, that was planted intentionally by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to help with soil erosion, which it does. It's great. It does a great job at it. Right? But unfortunately, oops. You know, now you go down south, you can't drive anywhere down south without seeing trees draped in this stuff. You know, so yeah. You know, we don't always know what's going to be invasive, what's not going to be invasive. But you know, off the top of my head, Euonymus elatus and Solastris ubiculatus, those two, orange bittersweet and winged burning bush, both in the same family. Okay, if one's invasive, you know, we might want to stay away from that family. You know, don't plant more of those. You know, even say, well, this one hasn't shown to be invasive anywhere else, but you don't know.
Is there some reason that you didn't include any of the flowering trees like the dogwoods and pear and things of that sort?
So we have no native pear trees. So all those calorie pears, I wouldn't plant myself. Well, I don't think they smell nice, but the calorie pear is now off the planting list in Ohio, Pennsylvania, I think Indiana. It's become extremely invasive in all three of those states.
Bridgewater.
And Bridgewater, yeah. And again, I think that's another great example of one that wasn't invasive for a while. Most of the cultivars didn't produce fruits until new cultivars came out that now have fruits on them. And yeah, so we're now seeing a potential invasive species in action.
Dogwood?
Dogwoods. I like dogwoods. A lot of people don't. Well, one, they're not very good at pollution. I did have one dogwood, a pagoda dogwood. As for the flowering dogwood, a lot of people don't like to plant it because it's highly susceptible to anthracnose. So they don't die from it, but they look horrible. They just don't look very happy with it. I mean, same thing with maples. In general, maples get it last. They get it just as much, but they don't show it as much. And most dogwoods are not very pollution tolerant either. But officially, all the trees I showed you do have flowers. Just not big and showing. Except for those 2 or 3. If you have any other suggestions, again, there's lots of other trees that we could put in here, but these were all ones that I pulled off of the website that Ray had shown me for the town. So those are all ones that I thought we might want to see and take a look at. So, yeah. There's lots of other examples that we could put up. Go ahead.
I would love to make illegal the poplar tree, and I'm not sure what variety it is, but my neighbor and I planted about a dozen of them around our properties, and they've done more damage. My driveway is like a roller coaster, and 3 of them are broken, we've crushed cars, we've crushed sheds.
Yeah, you've planted a fast-growing softwood tree, right? That is native, by the way, so the poplars are native. Yeah, and they're notorious. Anything in the willow family, their root systems are notoriously shallow. They tend to blow over easily, they break easily, but they're a fast-growing pioneer-type species. So whenever there's an area that's denuded of trees and stuff, one of the first things to come in, if it's the soil type is right, are the willows and the poplars. They all come in very quickly.
Those things are terrible, you know, we've actually had like daughters and granddaughters of these trees that are now like 60 to 100 feet tall. It's And it's kinda neat, cause it kinda stuck behind my
Oh, excuse me,
my neighbor's yard and stuff, so now he's got a problem.
Yeah, and then, you know, right, yeah, late spring, early summer, all that kind of cotton, so that kind of flies around in the air, they're also called cottonwoods for that reason. That's how the seeds are being dispersed, yeah. So we have, around here, most of what you're gonna have is probably Populus deltoides, but there's lots of poplars, Populus grandidentata, willows galore, we have all kinds of willows, and they hybridize like crazy. Go back.
Is there any varieties that you could recommend would have minimum or a low pollinization?
She mentioned the flowering dogwood, definitely lower on the pollen side on those guys. Oof. So you're gonna have to try to find anything that's gonna be insect pollinated, right? So the tulip tree, a good example, definitely, because nice big flotch of flowers, meaning the Magnolia family. Let's go back. The Nyssa would definitely be one, so the black tupelo. No. Well, it's bee pollinated, but still lots of tulip tree. This guy, so the sourwood, is a good example of one that's going to be bee pollinated. So those are some good examples of ones that we really know. But yeah, any of the maples, any of the oaks, yeah, that's all wind pollination. Yeah, so copious amounts of pollen.
It's actually kind of leading to another question I wanted to ask.
Sure.
Anything that would be good for attracting bee and butterfly?
Yeah, so butterfly. Poplars for butterflies, only because there's like 5 or 6 species of butterfly that all use the poplar as a food source for the caterpillars. Yeah, but as for attracting the butterflies themselves, I can't think of any tree per se, because they're mostly going to go to perennials and smaller bushes like the butterfly bush, which again, people will say don't plant those either because those are also native. Yeah, and anything in the willow family are actually used a lot by caterpillars.
I was just gonna say, we have some lindens on the property, and the bees absolutely love them.
Oh yeah, honey made from linden is so good, so really good, so very, very good. Yep, and it doesn't matter whether it's the American or European linden, they both do really well.
Any trees that are good against gypsy moth, and we haven't had with those, but it seemed like, I'm trying to remember back when we had the last invitation that.
This many. So back in the 1980s, when I grew up in Western Connecticut, literally our mountainsides were empty. There was nothing left on it. Even they were even going after things that you wouldn't think they'd go after, like things like pine trees and hemlocks were getting eaten because they were out of food. Even going after that. So yeah, I don't know of any trees that Lamantria dispar doesn't go after. So, and in Massachusetts, from what I've seen, it does seem like gypsy moths are a bigger problem central Mass and western Mass compared to here. Here, the bigger problem we have is winter moths in eastern Massachusetts, more so, or seemingly. I'm making a global statement, but I know we have both here.
What trees go back to Native American in this area? Native American plantings.
So ironically, there were actually fewer trees when the Europeans got here than after they arrived. When once they were here for X amount of time. So the Native Americans actually had way fewer forested areas than we do now. So we actually were reforesting when the Europeans came. They wanted more wood. They wanted more wood for burning, that kind of stuff for their homes and whatnot. So they actually planted things intentionally and let things come back. Yeah, a little irony there. But the only one that I mentioned in my list that's not native to Massachusetts is the one that's on the screen, the sourwood. Everything else were things that you can find here that were already here when the Native Americans were here.
What's the advantage of having evergreen trees? They look like Christmas trees.
Yeah. So I mean, with evergreens, what I think is they're green all the time, so therefore they look nice in the wintertime.
Mm-hmm.
Depends on the look you're going for. I didn't have any on the list here per se. Most evergreens are not pollution tolerant. So which is why a lot of towns don't plant them intensely, because when we put them on roadsides, let's call them a town tree. Most of them don't like pollution. You know, They're highly intolerant to that. The only one that I can, that's not an evergreen, but it's a cone-bearing tree, would be ginkgos. Right, so ginkgos are extremely pollution tolerant, not native obviously to China. Right? The other odd thing about both ginkgos and the Darwin redwood, which are both deciduous trees, they are no longer occurring in their native populations. There's no native trees of those anymore in China. They're all gone. They're all, so all we have now are just planted ginkgos and planted metasequoias.
They're effectively extinct in the wild.
They're extinct in the wild. Yep. So they only occur where we planted them now. Yep. They were over collected.
I have another stupid question.
Sure.
Maple trees,
Mhm.
don't laugh, because I have known nothing about trees. Which of the maple trees produce maple wood? Do they all do that?
They all do. Yep. So you can tap any of them. Right? The problem comes in the process. So the process of maple sugaring is just boiling. That's all you do. You get rid of the water to concentrate down the material. So sugar maples have between 1.5% to 3% sugar content in their sap, whereas a red maple or a Nora maple or straight maple, about 0.5%. All right, so it's just going to take you a whole lot longer to get that to do what you need to do. So as an example, since most sugar maples, it's about a 40-to-1 ratio, so it takes you 40 gallons of sap to create 1 gallon of syrup, right? So that's at a 2%. So if you put under 0.5%, you've got 1.5% less now. So you're not going to have to use like an 80-to-1 in your ratio. So they're going to take you 80 gallons of sap to get 1 gallon of syrup.
That's why it costs so much.
What's that?
That's why it costs.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and it's labor intensive too.
Right.
Yeah, and it's a short time frame. You can only tap them now. Actually, it's over. We're done. So once the trees start to flower, forget it. You're done. So you have to watch the sap. The sap will turn on you, so it'll be nice and clear. Then eventually you'll see a little bit of cloudiness come into it, and you'll taste it. It'll have a kind of a bitter taste to it. So it's all the proteins and tannins that are coming up from the root system to help the flowers being produced.
There's a lot of saps in DC. Yes.
Exactly. Yep.
The cherry tree, which is flowering now in Washington,
Mhm.
is it about to go away?
With respect to what do you mean by go away?
Well, it's been so popular and beautiful and so on. It just seems like the normal route now for something like that is.
Right. I hope not. I mean that was a huge offering from the Japanese government to us to do for that to happen. So I would hope they wouldn't. And on the website you were mentioning, right, the town website, the cherry trees are on there. The only one that's native is the one I mentioned, the Prunus americana. So Prunus yodoensis, Prunus autumnalis, they're all oriental cherries, so they're not native to here. They haven't shown invasiveness at all, and they also have lots of hybrids out there. So Prunus yodoensis and Prunus autumnalis are actually both hybrids of cherry trees from there. They're beautiful flowers, great smell, awesome pollen source for bees, good spring flowers, haven't shown invasiveness, but I was kind of concentrating on the natives for the talk. But yeah, any of those flowering cherries are really nice to have. I have a Prunus subhortella variety pendula leafing cherry in my house. So,
I don't know how resistant they are to, we planted a lot of them on Main Street as you're coming into Bridgewater. Again, for the beauty of the flowering in the springtime.
Yep.
I don't know how good they are with pollution.
Yeah, so they're poor to moderate pollution tolerance, so not bad. I mean, they're not low end. So they actually do have some pollution tolerance, so they're not too bad. I don't like the crabapple. They suck.
So I have a silly question. Christmas time, we bought like a mini tree. Yeah, roach okay, because we have a bay window. We put it in the bay window. I put it outside because I thought it was gone and we were gonna donate it someplace to the goats or whatever. The thing is growing. It has no roots. I mean, it just is the bottom of the cut off tree, and it's in the holder that it came in. And in the winter, it froze up.
In the water.
And the water kept it going, and in the spring, when it thawed.
So there's no roots at all on it?
No.
No.
What can I do? I'd love to like save it and put it in a pot
Can
and
we
grow
plant
it.
it in the back?
I just, like, it's the weirdest thing.
Can give it a try. I've never known any evergreen to be able to survive like that per se. I'm not saying it couldn't put on some new growth, because it depends on how much store material that the tree had in it in the first
Yeah.
place. But evergreens are not known to be able to cut off like that. You can use that kind of evergreen to do that, to produce roots and stuff. Yeah. I mean, you can try it, but I
All
can't
things
imagine
convenient,
it's gonna do anything.
just weird.
Yeah. Usually people tell me they have the little dwarf over spruces, the ones that are in pots, that kind of stuff. Yeah, those, and I don't like those either. Too prickly.
Another oddball question, is it possible to tell that you have carpenter ants inside your white pine before it breaks and takes down your wires and almost hits your house?
Right. Yeah, so usually if you look toward the base of the tree, you're gonna see some little piles of sawdust, more often than not. And again, you might attribute that to the tree itself, but more often than not, yeah, you're gonna find a little trail of sawdust coming out of the tree itself, more often than not.
And there's no way of checking their hunger?
How much they've actually done to the tree in the first place?
Yeah, yeah.
Not really, no. Maybe doing a core of some sort, but not really, no. Yeah. I know what you guys, when we're dealing with carpenter ants in our house right now, we don't have any in the house per se. I mean, they're in the house all over the place. We've checked and there's no colony in the house. So springtime is their time to go out and do their thing. So they're looking for new places to go, new homes to find. You're gonna find winged females, you're gonna find winged male, you're gonna find the big males, the small males, you're gonna find all different sizes and colors. Yeah, so right now they're hunting for new food sources, hunting for new water, new colonies to create, so don't be surprised to find carpenter ants in your house. That's what they do. Alright, so really quick before, I know we've been a little long, let's talk a little bit about planting our new tree. Alright, so some generalized guidelines for planting a new tree. You try to dig the hole about twice the width of the root ball. So if you have a 3-foot wide root ball, you want to try and dig about a 6-foot hole. Okay? Again, that's also going to depend on what you have in your yard for digging. If you've got a lot of rocks, you may not be able to get that big, but you at least want to be able to get it big enough so you can put some soil around the outside of it, tamp it down to give it a good start. Okay? Loosen up the soil a little bit in the hole to help promote root growth. You don't do too much, but a little bit loosening is fine. Okay? Dig the hole only as deep as the root ball, so that the top of your root flare, which I'll show you in a second, are either at soil level or just above. Now, you don't ever want to have your root flare below the soil. Okay? If you have any kind of strangler roots, again, it depends on what you can see. If it's a B&B, you can't see if you have any or not. But if it's like a can of some sort, and you pull it out, there's all kinds of roots twisted around the tree. Try to untwist those, tease them apart, or cut them if necessary. Okay? You also want to try to create a well around the planting holes and keep your water around the tree itself, so it's not kind of running off. Next, this is actually a thing from the National Arbor Day Foundation. It's things you can look at and whatever. I don't necessarily agree with filling the hole halfway full of water. That's an awful lot of water to be putting in your hole. That's the one thing I'm like, I wouldn't go quite that much water. But what you should do, however, is if you're putting in, especially a very large tree, and it can be expensive. You don't want to go, losing this tree in a year or two. I would suggest dig the hole, put water in it, and come back the next day. If you still have standing water in that hole, don't put your tree there, unless it's one that can handle it. All right, so if your water has not drained away during a 24-hour period, don't plant your tree there. Right, it's not going to be happy. Again, unless it can handle it. Right, the black tupelo is probably one of the ones I mentioned that would be able to handle that kind of a standing water system. Red maple too. Those two. Other than that, none of them will go on that way. One good way of trying to check to make sure your hole is at the right depth is to use your shovel. Right? Put your shovel across the hole, right? And if your shovel is resting right on top of the root ball, you know you're at the right level for where your tree has to be down inside. That hole looks a bit big to me for the size of that root ball, but if you can dig it that big, great, that's fine. If you want to have all that extra space, that's not a problem. Right, but you wouldn't have to go quite that large. It almost looks like 3 times the size. I could take that root ball and put 3 of them in that hole. Soil amending, amend the soil only if it's really, really necessary, right? Because you really want your tree to be used to the native soil you're putting it into. So if you go amending it with too much material, that tree is going to be very happy to put out lots of roots right where it is, but they're not going to go out into the actual native soils. Sorry, I'm getting a spam call. If the tree does require more organic matter, or if the soils are low in the macronutrients, so nitrogen, phosphorus, or potassium, then you can add some of those to the backfill.
can I just ask?
Sure.
So my daughter bought a house and it had these crummy shrubs, so we pulled them out and we planted some new, and the roadies failed. So I planted them
Roadies?
again and they failed again, and I believe it's because after a little bit of reading, the old stuff had taken all the nutrients out of the soil, and the soil needed to be amended, and I did not do that.
Yeah, so rhododendrons are shallow rooted, so they take all the nutrients from the top layer. So
Yeah.
they do not go down at all. So yeah, so if it is nutrient poor, yeah, so rhododendrons are a great example of one that you certainly could amend with no problem.
Right, well,
Yeah.
I realized it like 4 years later.
Right, yeah.
Many
And then,
roadies.
make sure and grab a, acidifying type, fertilizer, so,
Right, I thought you didn't I thought when you bought from a nursery, you didn't fertilize right away.
they usually suggest not fertilizing for the first year.
Yeah.
But with rhododendron, if you know they've been there, they've been planted there before, I would definitely, maybe at
Okay.
that point. Yep. Yep. So, Espoma is one of the companies that's out there that does really good, so they have, a product called Hollytone. So anything that's an acid lover plant, so,
Right.
hydrangeas, rhododendrons, azaleas, all that kind of things, Japanese pioneers, yeah, all acid lovers. If you're gonna work anything in, nice organic soil-based fertilizer works great. Again, Espoma is a great example of one to put in. If you buy a larger tree that comes with what we call B&B or bagged in burlap, or has a wire cage on it, you want to remove the sisal, the rope, all right, ties and the burlap itself around the base of the tree and off the top of the root ball. But you do not want to remove all of it, right? You do not want to compromise the root ball. You compromise the root ball, that tree's probably not going to make it, right? Especially if it's a taproot one. You definitely want to do that, right? You can leave the burlap on the remaining part of the ball, right? If there's a wire cage around the root ball, pull the wire cage away from the root flare, right, and the top of the root ball, bend it down in the planting hole. Remove about up to 1/3 of the burlap and wire cage if possible, right? But again, don't remove the entire wire cage. If the B&B is good enough and you can get the cage off without hurting the tree, take it off, right? But again, there's usually big enough spaces in those wire cages that the roots have no issue growing out from the wire cage. And most of them are made of metal that's gonna rust within probably 5 to 6 years, it'll be gone anyways. So here's an example of one that's just a ball of burlap, no wire cage on it. So we have the sisal tie around the tree itself, right? And again, never ever untie your tree before you get it in the hole, if you ever tried this before. It's so hard to move when they're untied, so keep it tied up. This hole, looking at it, here looks too shallow to me. It
Yeah.
doesn't look quite deep enough, but again, maybe they couldn't get any deeper, I don't know. Right? They probably use these planks to roll it down into the hole, right? But again, so you're gonna wanna remove this sisal from around the top of the tree. Oh, I see it does have a wire cage, I didn't see that. There's a wire cage, so it's tied to that wire right there, right? So you're gonna wanna remove this rope around the tree itself and pull it back so it's just around the very edge of the tree, or around the edge of the root ball. This is more typical of a B&B with a wire cage on it. Again, same thing. So on this one, I would take all the rope off whatsoever, because this wire cage is going to hold this root ball together very well. Right? Bring the burlap all the way back to the top of this wire cage. If you can get this top part of the cage off, which is in the hole, great. Take the first layer off and leave these bottom 3 layers on. Don't take any more off than that top part. And that's it. Okay. Staking only when necessary. Right? Too many people love to stake their trees. It actually does more harm than good. Right? Because if you're staking the tree and you're not allowing that tree to bend and move with the wind, it's not going to strengthen its stem up. Right? So it's going to be having issues. So when it gets older, there's not as much lignified tissue in those initial layers, and it's going to break more easily. Right? But if you are in a windy location, if the root ball has become compromised, all right, or your tree is at least 10 feet tall, then you might want to consider putting some stakes on it, and only for the first year. After that point, take the stakes off. I don't know how many trees I've seen where I know those things have been on for 5 to 10 years. It's like, no, just take it off, remove it, right? And then make sure and use rubber or cloth collars on them, so don't put any kind of sisal or wire right up against the tree. It's going to mark the tree up. I would not have staked that tree. This is a little bitty fruit tree. That's overkill on that poor little tree. But again, they thought it was something they needed to do, so I just showed you what not to do. Yeah, so that little tree, it's definitely not over 10 feet tall. I would not have staked that in the slightest. Right? But it does have some good stakes. It also has some rubberized material around it, so that's fine. Right? This is an example of somebody using more like a canvas or some sort of a a cloth wrap around it. And also notice too that there's plenty of space for the tree to move a little bit back and forth. All right, so you do not want your stakes super tight either. You want to make sure the tree has some play in it. I know you don't want it to fall over, but at least have a little bit of wiggle room inside your tie-up when you tie it up. Mulching, about 3 inches or so of mulch on your tree. All right, keep the mulch away from the actual stem of the tree. And we do not want mulch volcanoes, which I'll show you what those look like. Right? And always use a mulch that keeps pests away. So do not use wood chips. All right, wood chips are inviting termites and carpenter ants to come eat your tree. All right, so cedar, hemlock, pine bark, those are all fine. Those are all pest-resistant type mulches, right? Even the colored ones. This is a mulch volcano. You do not want this. Okay? You are killing your tree with love. All right, you want to make sure it stays well. You know, the water stays there, and the root system stays cool. That's all great, but that part of the tree that's now inside all this mulch, unless it's a willow or a poplar, if you have a willow or poplar, both volcanoes to you, blue in the face. They will not care. But when it comes to most other trees, you're suffocating the tree. So that part of the tree is not used to being underground or having stuff around it. So you're actually going to cause that part of the tree to rot. Right? So that part of the tree was not designed.
Who has trained all the
No one. That's just
landscape
they work
people to do that?
Yeah. So yeah, landscapers are good at mowing lawns. Landscapers are not good at planting trees. Yeah, so mulch volcanoes, bad. bad. This is what you want to see, right? So more than likely underneath it, whoops, sorry. Go back. Right. More than likely underneath of this ring around here, there's a ring of soil. So when you dig your soil out, you put your tree in, there's actually going to be more soil than you have because you just put a bunch of things in the hole. So take that extra soil, make a ring of soil around the tree. Right? That's going to allow the water to stay there around the tree itself. Right? And mulch over that ring with your mulch. Putting a little bit of mulch by the tree itself, fine. But again, no volcanoes. Volcano bad. Right? When it comes to watering it, on average, they say 1 inch or so of water per week, rain, whatever. All right. Or if you want to know about gallon-wise, about 6 to 8 gallons of water per inch of trunk diameter. So if you only have a 1-inch diameter, you're going to pour about 6 to 8 gallons of water per week, right, in general. Right? Thorough soaking is way better than a light soaking. Right? I also suggest if you're going to water your tree, don't use a garden hose. Right? Because we tend to overestimate how much we've actually put on there with a garden hose. Use a bucket, use a watering can, so that way you have an idea as to how much you've actually put on there. And people tend to underestimate how much they've actually watered with a garden hose. That's just in general. Right? Water the tree for the first year. Some suggest 2 years. I think 1 year is usually enough. But because you also want to make sure that that tree gets used to your climate also. Right? And again, as you mentioned earlier, avoid fertilizing for the first year. But if you do have to because you're really poor in something, then go ahead and do that if you need to. Questions? Other questions we haven't already hit. All right, cool. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you guys I'm always happy to take any kind of plant questions you guys may have, diseases, whatever, planting issues, whatever. So I can write on this? Right. I can write, okay. I want to make sure there's pens here. Right? All right, so there's my school email. So it's ractor@princew.edu. So I'm always happy to take questions, or if you have something that comes up mid-season, whatever, and you say, hey, I got this really weird thing happening on my tree. What's going on? I get pictures of insect galls all the time on oak trees. I say, oh, that's kind of cool. You got this little wasp that's living in there. So.
Thank you.
My fat head's in the way.
I have it if anybody wants.
It's on camera.
How about cicadas? We getting cicadas this year?
Last year was the big year for the cicadas. So there was a 17-year, 10-year, I think the 13-year were all last year. So this year, we're not going to get the 17, we're done with those. As for the other ones, we get cicadas every year. So it isn't like you're going to have a year with no cicadas. They're going to be every year, right, what you do. But it just depends on how many broods you're going to get. And it's also depending where you are too. So here you're gonna get, like, here we had our 17 years this year. You go 100 miles south, they may get their 17
Yeah, I
years
just
this
saw
year.
something, I forgot what states you're supposed to get a bunch of them.
Yeah, we just had our big brood last year. Yeah. And the adults don't eat, they just buzz and have sex and die. What a life!
Well, again, thank you.
All right, you guys are more than welcome. Thank you for having me, I appreciate it.